Another episode of geekoutdoors.com, another live weekly episode. Let me get it set up right here and we're going to get right into the news. So let me make sure the live stream is running. Hopefully it is running. While I'm waiting for that to come on, what we're going to be talking about this week are pretty much all related to security. The first thing is the Uber hack. Second is Intel CPU vulnerabilities. And finally, the latest release of Kali Linux 2017.3. So this is going to be a security heavy episode. And so let's see if the live chat is on. Okay. So if you've never ever done like a YouTube live stream, I think Google is doing this on purpose. If you try to do a live stream through YouTube on your desktop, it's actually a pain in the butt, okay? You can use Google Hangout, which is way easier the way they had it before, but if you had to do it through YouTube's desktop, you have to set up streaming. If you were doing it through something like OBS, and it's just, to me, it's extremely complex. I like the old way they were doing it with Hangouts before. So, and obviously they make it really easy to do live streams on your mobile device because that's where they want you to do the live streams. And so, all right, it's on. Obviously, it's good. Let me get this out here. Okay. All right. I think I've got this working. Okay. So, the first bit of news, if you didn't know, is actually Uber admitted or actually told the public that their accounts have been hacked. Actually, at this point, 57 million accounts have been hacked. That includes customer data. That also includes drivers' data too, the people actually driving the Uber cars. Now, in the whole scheme of companies and government institutions having their data compromised, unfortunately, it's nothing new. I mean, just remember, just earlier this year, we had Experian. And that was a huge hack. And the ramifications of that, it's still yet to be seen because that's credit data and that's probably the most sensitive data that we have besides whatever the governments have. But why this one's different is because this actually happened October 2016. So Uber knew about this since 2016. And right now, the huge controversy around it is the fact that Uber did know about this, and even their former CEO, founder, and their technical officer, and also their lawyer, they actually supposedly got a hacker group to actually try to remove all the data that was actually stolen and maybe possibly put out on the internet. And so they were trying to conceal this information. Supposedly, it's actually going through legal processing right now where, Google was, or I'm sorry, not Google, but Google is related with this as well, where Uber was trying to make sure the public didn't know about this and get rid of all this information before it became known. But because there was an article on Bloomberg, this thing surfaced and now it's all over the internet. And as I stated earlier, governments are looking into it. There's already been, lawsuits filed, and that's not good. Okay, especially why this is important for Uber is because, as you know, the former founder / CEO, he's no longer the CEO. He's basically kind of like kicked off of the board. However, he's still a big part of the company, and so there is a new CEO, and they are doing what they say is the best things to actually take care of this, okay, because this is not the right thing to do, okay, but it's only not the right thing whenever they are exposed. Okay, now this is important for Uber. The reason why they concealed it so long, my opinion, is for the same reasons that most businesses and government institutions do not want to reveal any type of security information right away, because number one, they want to really know what's going on. They want to research everything. Okay, that is a best practice for any company or government institution. You know, you want to do your research first. And then secondly, if you do reveal this, then it's going to definitely hurt your brand image. And then if you're a government institution, it's definitely going to hurt the people's confidence in the governments. Okay? So usually whenever these security hacks occur, and like I said, this is a normal thing. We've seen this before, unfortunately. It'll usually be a few months before they actually come out with the news or they are quote unquote exposed. Okay, but something like what happened with Uber, it's actually a little different because of the simple fact that they knew for such a long time. And that is the huge problem. And also because of the fact that they potentially try to conceal this information. Hey Tommy, hi, good morning. Thanks for joining. And so that's the biggest difference between what's occurred here with other big data breaches like with Experian early in the year and versus Uber. And Uber is going through a really tough transition phase right now because they've been in a legal dispute, firstly with Google, who owns the self-driving car service Waymo. And Uber supposedly stole some information from Waymo's or Google's actually self-driving services, and they're using it for their own self-driving services. Okay, and so at one point, I think one of the engineers actually worked for Google, and then they went to Uber, or they had some type of information sharing. But bottom line, Google is saying Uber stole some information from them, and so they were going through that. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is Uber is a very highly valued company. You know, if you think about it, companies like Uber and Airbnb, they own no cars for Uber, and they own no hotels for Airbnb. And they're both valued in billions. If I remember correctly, Uber's valued over $50-something billion, which is absolutely insane. They don't even technically have employees for their drivers. You know, they have contractors, okay, who like individuals like us who would decide to drive for Uber. And so it's a wonderful business model. And so with all of that being said, they were in talks to have a huge investment by SoftBank. And if you're not familiar with SoftBank, if you are in the United States, you probably heard of Sprint, right? With Sprint, the majority shareholder is SoftBank. And SoftBank is a huge telecom conglomerate company out of Japan. And they were going to invest, I think, about $10 or $11 billion into Uber. And so it was very important for Uber to take care of all these legal problems and especially the image problems surrounding their CEO and everything else. Hey, good morning, Samuel S. Thanks for joining. And so there's a lot more to it than what we've seen here. Okay, I mean, there's a lot of people involved. There's definitely huge monetary repercussions of this. And, you know, as with every single data breach that we've seen, even with our own governments, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, there's always going to be, first and foremost, there's always going to be a lot of anger and distrust from people who are affected, which are a lot of people. I mean, we're talking millions. Most of the time, all these big breaches, they're not small. They're actually pretty huge. And the amount of accounts that were actually breached, it's only whatever we are told through the media. You know, there could be more, okay? And so usually when this happens, people get angry, of course. And then at the same time, there are legal proceedings, okay? But I'll talk about this a little bit later. But, you know, that doesn't always lead to something, okay? Hey, good morning, John. Thanks for joining. And so with this particular more bad news for Uber, it kind of coincides with Google that they're also going to be investing in Lyft, which is their competing rideshare service. And if you look all the way around the world, ride-sharing services are growing huge, especially in China. And I cannot remember the name of the car driving service over there, but Uber tried to go in there and the Chinese basically beat them, and then they have their own companies out there. And this is all around the world. So this is absolutely a huge business sector, and it's not just for consumer vehicles. And I think I've mentioned this before. Once they get self-driving cars, they can apply this to trucks, semi-trucks to do transportation. And then they could use the same technology or similar technology for trains, for boats, for airplanes. You get the idea. And so it's not just about this drive hailing service. It's much, much bigger. And because it's getting into the self-driving people who are Uber drivers, they will no longer be needed in the future because the self-driving AI and all the technology surrounding it will take care of this. And so this is absolutely massive for Uber, and not only Uber, Google, and any other company that wants to get into this. And I could guarantee you many other companies will get into this. I could easily see Amazon getting into this, and even Apple, okay, because they have the resources. And Facebook is definitely going to have their technology in there as well. And so, pretty horrible news, especially for people who are actually a driver or a customer of Uber services. And so, hopefully, they will be able to help the people who've been affected. But of course, that's not the first priority at this point. The first priority is damage control, and then all the legal proceedings that's going to go around it, you know. And so I'll talk about the other thing later. And so, hey, good morning, Lance. Thanks for joining, all of you. Okay, so that's the first thing with Uber. And I was kind of surprised when I was looking through the news this week, because normally what I do is, as if you see my channel, you know, I'm basically a geek lifestyle variety channel. You know, I'm a geek, and so I make a variety of videos in different categories, but they're like the same type of categories. And so every week I usually talk about geek news and what's going on. Okay, so whenever we do the live episode, I kind of compile everything throughout the week. And sometimes we have weeks like this where there's so many things happening in the same area. And so that's why I just like all this news is all related to security. And after I read the Uber stuff, there was some other security stuff, and it has to do with Intel, which can be pretty bad. I mean, actually way bigger than the Uber, because it affects potentially everyone. Okay, so not everyone, but a lot of people. Hey, Lance, Lance is asking, Gunslinger Girl's playing in the background. Great show. Yep, Gunslinger Girl. This is season 1. So it is. I haven't seen it in a long time. I've only seen a few episodes, but yeah, it's pretty sweet. So the second bit of news is Intel vulnerability. Okay, and so if you didn't know, there could be potentially millions of computers that could be hijacked and affected due to a vulnerability bug that have been found in the Intel line of CPUs. And let me see, Core i7, Core i9, Core i5, Xeon, for Xeon servers as well. Let me see how far it goes back. It affects which CPUs? Intel core processors from the 6th generation, Skylake, Kaby Lake, computers all the way back to 2015. Wow, Atom CPUs, Apollo. Okay, so let me see what the actual vulnerabilities are. And I just saw this, so I have not had a chance to get too much into it. Let me see. So basically, with this particular vulnerability, what they could do is they can actually, wow, they can even affect Internet of Things. Oh man, okay. So using vulnerabilities, they can actually, let me see, launch commands, get access to system level admin privileges, and remote attacks with admin access. But at least right now, the only thing is most of these vulnerabilities, they require some type of physical access. But the really worrying thing with this is because Intel CPUs are in a lot of stuff. And the funny thing is, I actually talked about this, I think in the last episode, where the Internet of Things, you know, like your routers, your security cameras, actually there's so many things, your refrigerators, so many of them, they just, you know, news like basically operating systems, most of it's Linux based, and that don't get updated obviously. And then the CPUs, in a lot of them, they are running, you know, like low-end Intel CPUs. Okay, so with the combination of those things, you know, a person with the abilities can actually hack into these systems and take control. Okay, and since the security goes all the way down to the CPU level, the memory level, it is a serious threat, especially when things like this happen. Okay, so the bad side of this, as I just mentioned earlier, is because Intel CPUs are in a lot of stuff. Everything from what I just mentioned, Internet of Things, and to mostly our computers, and of course servers. I mean, Intel is everywhere. And so the good thing is, well, I don't know if there is a good thing, but there is a patch that has been put out, I think. Yes, they've already patched their I mean, companies like HP, Dell, and other vendors, they've already completed patches with the firmware for their distribution. And so obviously those companies have a huge vested interest because they actually make servers. Okay, and so a lot of servers, they're going to have Intel CPUs. Actually, I would say more than 90% of all the servers run an Intel CPU. Okay, so the patches have gone out. And it just, like, once again, it's just really concerning, you know. And I'm really most concerned about, and I mentioned this before, is the Internet of Things devices. You know, I mean, I wish I knew more about security so I could talk at a deeper level on it, but I'm not sure how these vendors, whenever they create their hardware and then they put the operating system on there with the CPUs and everything else, I don't know, like, the type of security testing, how rigorous it is. Okay, because I'm pretty sure, and correct me if I'm wrong if anybody knows on there, but if you are a manufacturer, right, and you are producing an Internet of Things device, or it could even be a toy robot or something, right? Or a cleaning robot that actually has an operating system, obviously, like a Linux-based operating system, and then it has obviously an Intel CPU or something, right? I am pretty sure when it comes to security testing, it is definitely not going to go through the same types of testing versus something like a smartphone. Okay, and I'm positive smartphones go through a lot more rigorous security testing because it's a smartphone and it carries a lot of sensitive data. Where something like a robot cleaning device or a internet connected refrigerator will probably go through some very, very basic testing, you know, because of the nature of the devices. But I think the problem with that, as we're seeing, and we're probably going to see more and more of this as more data breaches occur and security flaws are found. Hopefully, I think the organizations, whoever are part of these, and I'm pretty sure they have a set of standards for security that they will not only increase the level of testing and security that's involved with these other type of devices, but also, and I'm not sure how they're going to do this, okay, but also try to come up with some standards that will allow them to update or patch devices that wouldn't normally have this, okay? And I'm not sure how that's going to work. You know, I keep thinking about things like I said, security cameras, the refrigerators, microwaves, stuff like that. Everything's going to be internet connected, our wearables. You know, I mean, if it already has an internet connection, then obviously you could send out patches, okay? But the problem with that, once again, it's kind of like a double-edged sword. If you are connected to the internet, that's great in terms of you being able to push updates, okay? That's great, especially when it comes to security. But the problem is, the flip side is, you're connected to the internet, which means people who have the skills and the means, they can also access your device and do other things with it. And so that's kind of like a double-edged sword. And so Sam, oh, okay, Lance is saying, mine is an i5 7600K. I hope Mint does an update to fix that. I do too. Sammy has to say mine is 4th generation Pentium G3240. Hope nothing breaks in. Yeah, Sam and Lance, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit later because all of this security stuff, it's kind of related, and it's just my own general thoughts, okay? And I'm hoping that these patches do go out quick, and I think they will, you know what I mean? Especially with a distribution like Linux Mint. And of course, Intel, this can affect, well, it will affect billions of people because the CPUs are in so many places. And let's just not forget that the CPU itself being affected, it only doesn't affect one person. Imagine a server, okay? If that gets compromised, that one server can actually serve millions upon billions of people. Just think about something like the stock market exchange, right? They all have servers running everything. And so if the servers, which are mostly pretty much all running on Intel-based CPUs, if they get compromised for whatever reason, now they have access to billions of people. Just think about the stock market as a good example of that and how much of a impact that could cause the whole international economy. So think about it that way. Just when I think about data breaches and stuff, and I will talk about this a little bit later, I don't think about one individual anymore, because we're not in that age anymore. I think about the impact to how many people this one device is actually serving. And that's why whenever these groups of hackers or security, whatever you want to call them, whenever they attack, they don't attack individual machines. And I'll talk about that later. They attack bigger stuff because that has a much wider exposure, and so that's why they do that. Okay, and so the last bit of news I want to talk about, and like I said, I hope the patches come soon. Good morning, Shatter. Thanks for joining. So the last bit of news is Kali Linux. It's actually released a new version, the latest Kali Linux 2017.3, and this is kind of funny that I'm talking about Kali Linux along with all the data breaches that just occurred. And so let me read some of the things that is going to come out. And that's, wow, Kali Linux 2017.2 was just shipped in September. Okay, so these are just some of the things I'm reading off. Some of the general changes: ext4 directories can now contain 2 billion entries. TLS support built into the kernel. CIFS now uses SMB 3.0 by default. And then a lot of the tools that are built in, Inspire, Cherry Tree, let me see, Enumerates, Massive, Maltego, OSR Framework, they've all had updates. And Shatter saying, yeah, great, good day to all. Thank you, Shatter. And so if you are not familiar with what Kali Linux is, Kali Linux is the most popular Linux distribution for security. And what they do, the company that actually is basically the maintainer and of the open source project, which is Kali Linux, is offensive security. And what they specialize in is penetration testing. And if you are not familiar with penetration testing, well, it's related to all this stuff that we just talked about. So what they do is they try to penetrate systems. They try to look for security vulnerabilities. They're trying to hack into the systems. And that's the main purpose of the Kali Linux distribution, is for you to do penetration testing. Now, I've used Kali Linux before, and it is awesome. I honestly, if they were to charge for this, I would pay for it. Because with Kali Linux, with all the tools that you're able to use, I myself, I was able to use it on my website, and I just want to tell you how, how security, at least now in a modern age, it's very complex, but at the same time, if you know what to do, it could be so easy for you to look for vulnerabilities and get into it. For example, when I used Kali Linux, I did some penetration testing on my website, and with just Kali Linux, I was able to get my admin passwords to my website, which was crazy because I thought I secured it. And so that's just one example. And with all the tools that you have, there's so many ways that you can test different websites, different services. And that's why Kali Linux is so powerful. And Offensive Security, who maintains all this, they are actually a security company, and they offer penetration testing certifications and courses for people who want to do ethical hacking. Okay, but obviously unethical people are going to use this as well. Okay, but if you just look at it objectively, this is an absolutely amazing tool. More than likely, I'm gonna actually download it again. It's been a while since I used Kali Linux, and just try to learn it more. And the reason why is I'm gonna lead up to all of this right now. Hey, good morning, Gaza. Thanks for joining. So what all of this security news is leading up to is basically my general thoughts on security. And this might be similar to what I've talked about before, but with all this news, I just come to the realization that, or maybe I've already had these thoughts, that there needs to be a different approach as an individual to security. And so what I mean by that is this: if you are if you're in the age range where you remember when computers first came out, right? At least personal computers. First with the Apple IIe computers, then there were also Tandy computers, and after that, for myself, it was the Commodore computers, and then it was the Amiga ST, And then obviously we have all the IBM/Windows PCs, which are now everywhere. And obviously Apple Mac is still there. And so back then, when you thought about security, you thought about securing yourself. Okay, so back then you really only thought about securing your own computer with obviously antivirus programs, or if you wanted to secure your computer hardware wise, you would get a lock or something, right? And that's how you would secure your system back then. But hey, good morning, Vasil, thanks for joining. But now, ever since the internet came, we're in a whole different age now. And I know I'm probably speaking to people who know that. But my feeling is, in our modern age and going forward, we do not have control of our security. Okay, we've mentioned this many times, privacy is gone. But now let's talk about security. Because you don't have to be a security expert to understand that your most secure information is not on your computer anymore. It's on the internet. And if you think about all the pieces of data that's on the internet, whether it's voluntary or not, it's absolutely staggering how much information. If you think about it, your banking information is online. All your credit information is online. All your various social media accounts are online. All your credit data that's related to your government IRS data, at least here in the US, they're all interconnected. And a lot of those things, like your credit and your government information, you have absolutely no control over. But now, there's so many different pieces of information online that data altogether knows more about you than you do. Okay, so let me give you an example. And Shatter is saying, yes, Kali Linux based on Debian's for penetration testing, but you can make any Linux BSD distro for penetration, but you need those tools and you have to follow law under the country. Yeah, Shatter, it has it built in, and God saying LL only run air-gapped computers. That's funny. Okay, so what I'm saying is we have less control because there's so much information on there. So let me give you an example of how basically insecure our data is. Okay, because everything's on the internet, on the cloud, you know, you don't control that. That's the biggest things. That's why all these different hacks that are occurring with big companies, big government institutions, we're talking millions and millions of data, and you yourself as an individual, you have absolutely no control over that. Okay, and so let me give you a simple example of how the data, or how your data is being used or collected. Okay, and once again, this is really not many things that you can control. Okay, let's think about simple things. You have an account on Facebook, right? Twitter, whatever. Okay, YouTube, all of those require an email. Okay, so that's the first step. You're already giving something personal. Okay, and a lot of email providers now, they require some type of phone number, whereas before they didn't. And so now they're tied to your phone number, which they could track, obviously. And so now they have a way to get to your phone number, which once you start using their services, especially with social media like Facebook, they're able to connect that phone number to other people and friends that you have. Okay, so now they have access to your entire network. That's just one simple example. From your email, and then you use their services, they're able to connect the dots. That's one. And then secondly, think about your banking information. How now there's not just banking, they're connected to other services. So like us on Facebook, or connect with your Google services, or whatever. Now they're all interconnected. So just that right there. And then just think about something simple like you go to a website. Okay, if you're familiar with tracking or myself digital marketing, a lot of times if you go to a website, people have heard of the term cookies, right? But there's also things like Facebook pixels or remarketing tags, where if you go to a website, we could actually follow you around with ads. But at the same time, we're actually able to use that same information and then go to your Facebook accounts, and we don't have to know anything about you, but we're able to find people who are similar to you. Okay, or within your network, because Facebook and Google have that information, right? Same thing with Apple as well. They're all the same. So you go to a website, you do a like or something, you leave the website, now we can follow you around. okay, because of the tracking that we put in. And so just think about those, and I'm kind of going through the details because I want to show you how much data that is being collected, okay? So the banks know about you, of course the government knows about you because they know about you, but that's going to be connected as well. And so just those few interactions, you went to a website or you went to YouTube, it doesn't matter. All of those can be connected. And even if they're saying, hey, you know, we keep everything anonymous, no, they can track you down to every level. And then if you think about even more specific details, there are things on websites like heat maps. So they're able to tell where you clicked, okay? Or even if you are on Facebook, any of these, there are different zones. So they know the type of things you click on, they know the type of things that you watch, and then this information is all combined together, okay? So now they have the deepest profile on you. And then if you have credit monitoring, which most people do, and they already have it anyway, they'll get some of that information. You know, don't tell me that they're not getting it, because they're all connected, so they will have that information. So to make a long story short, they know absolutely everything about you, then even things that you don't know. Like, you probably don't think about the things, the type of habits, what you click on, how many times you clicked on something, how long you read, how long you watch a video, you know, how many of your friends you tag. You probably don't think about all those things. But because they know all of those, and then they can connect it to many other services, that's why the data that we have today is so valuable to everyone, to all the companies, to all the businesses, to all the government institutions, because of all our online services. And now people are accustomed to saving everything online, and you really are forced to anyway. Now they will have more information and more personal data online than you will ever have on your physical computer. Okay, so just think about it that way. If you really think about your personal computer and what you actually put on your computer, I think most people, they'll have all their stuff online, you know, even their passwords. They'll use a service like LastPass or something, right? Because they have so many passwords everywhere. Who's going to keep that on their computer? Like I still do. I mean, I have it on a notepad or a text pad, you know, but most people won't do that. They'll have it all online because they've been trained to do that, and it's more convenient, okay? And so, yeah, so that's why not only our privacy, but our security, it's absolutely out of our control, okay? I still will always say that take the most measures that you can on your personal computer, but even with that, it doesn't help as much anymore, because of the simple fact that the targets are not your personal computer. The targets are what's online, which is out of your control, okay? Because even if people were to take over your computer, let's just think about it this way, from somebody or a group who's actually trying to break into systems and get data or control. I mentioned earlier, why would they try to spend all that time and effort and money to get into people's individual computers, where they could get into a server and have access to billions of people? You know, so it's not worth their time to do it. About the only thing that's worth their time is to get into your computer, not really to control it. And if they did want to control it, they'll probably make your computer a zombie device so it could perform DNS attacks or something like that, okay? Or they'll just encrypt your whole computer so that you could pay them a ransom. But that's like peanuts. That's not where the big money is. Where the big money and the big power and control is them accessing all these servers that are all around the world that are, you know, like actually being used by billions of people. And so that's why, in terms of your personal computer, I don't think securing it will be as important as what's going on the cloud or on the internet. Okay, so let me answer some stuff. Shatter says there are Black Arch based on Arch, Pen 2 based on Gen 2, and some others, but always remember that don't use the district for negative working purposes that violated the law under your country. You know, Shatter, ethically, you're right. Okay, I mean, you want to have some control of what you do, but those tools are there, just like Kali Linux. Okay, I mean, in a perfect world, you know, we would like people to be ethical and be good, you know, but that's not the world we live in, unfortunately. So in a real world, as you know, I mean, people are going to use whatever tools and services that will allow them to get what they want, okay? And myself personally, in terms of security, okay, let me read through this. My general thoughts. I mean, first, personal security, secure your own machine as much as possible. I really feel most of your security, the most important stuff is not on your computer anymore, okay? And you don't have control over that, okay? Or you have very little control. Okay, so Vasil is saying the weakest point in IT security, human factor. Vasil, yes, I will always say that is the weakest point, but I think that's changing, Vasil. I think that's changing, and I'll go into why. So Gaza, if it's saying not even Tor is safe, entry and exit nodes are monitored, there's no safe space. Yeah, Gaza, there is no safe space. For example, Tor, right? It uses an onion base, it's a layering based system, okay? Meaning that there's not one single point. So onion, the onion layer is that your location and stuff, it's in different places. Okay, so and there's many different layers of security, and so it's harder for things to track you. Okay, on the Tor, and Tor, the browser actually doesn't work on the internet, the normal internet as we know. It works on the deep web. Okay, and what I mean by the deep web, and there's probably something people heard of the dark web, but the deep web is an area of the internet that is not indexed by Google or other search engines, but the thing is, Google and Facebook are already there as well. Facebook especially. Facebook is in the deep web. Okay, so trust me, they're already there. I mean, people just don't know it yet. So even if you're on the dark web or the deep web, it doesn't matter because these companies are already there. They would be stupid not to invest their money and time getting in there. Okay, and so Shatter is saying, first of all, read the TLDR documentation, RTM before using any distro or app software. PS, do not use it your own risk. Yeah, Shatter's right. If you are going to be using these other distros that are security focused, and I'll get into why I think it might be harder for you to learn ethical hacking or just hacking in general. I'll tell you why. And God's is saying, I remember the good old days when you could hide behind an array of proxies. Yeah. Or, I guess in the good old days, and when I say good old days, let's just say like in the early 90s, if you're running Linux, since nobody knew about it as a desktop, you're pretty much secure. I mean, but that's really not the case anymore. But yeah, I get what you're saying, Gaza. And so, Gotta say, you're gonna download this gesture, check the SHA. Yeah. So Vasil's point was saying the weakest point in IT security is human factor. Yeah, Vasil, I would agree with you for the most part. I still think that today is still the biggest problem. Okay, but going forward in the future, the human factor will not be the biggest problem because, as I was saying, the human factor. It's really with your personal computers. And obviously you have sysadmins and stuff. People make mistakes. They're people, right? But more and more, we are relying on AI and artificial intelligence. And so in the future, it won't really be a human error because a lot of things are done by AI. And that's the scary thing, you know, because that Terminator world, it is coming. I mean, it really is. I mean, if you think about objectively, how would the whole Terminator scenario work in the real world? Well, in the real world, we already have factories that build robots. They're called car manufacturers. I mean, they've been using robots to build cars for decades now, and so humans have been less and less of a factor. If you think about just not cars, but think about airplanes, boats, a lot of big machinery, they're robots that are building that. And so you can easily imagine that robots, just like humans, we need a brain, and for the robots, the brain is the intelligence. And so you can imagine, as AI gets more advanced, it would not be difficult to see the scenario, just like James Cameron did when he did the Terminator, where it would build these military devices and robots on their own. You don't need humans, you know, they would just keep building more of themselves. And as artificial intelligence evolves, much like human intelligence, it builds newer connections. It learns new things, you know, new patterns. But since it is a technology, it'll grow exponentially faster than the human brain can. And so if you take that scenario, Terminator, yeah, it's coming. I mean, and then since humans are so much more reliant on technology, then even if it did occur, you being able to stop it, it's going to be very difficult, okay? Because everything's so much heavily dependent upon technology. There isn't a place that doesn't depend on technology. So you can think about all your nuclear facilities and so forth. They're all run by computers. I mean, they are. They're not humans pulling switches. Okay, and so anyway, that's a real world scenario, and I really think it is going to happen as AI becomes more advanced. The Matrix has talked about this before, and you know, if there are computers and machines, they're going to take a very binary objective approach. And I think Matrix talked about this before, but the humans destroy things, they consume things. Okay, I mean, if you think about that, and not as a human being, okay, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about objectively, humans use the most resources, they also destroy the most resources, and they create wars. Okay, so if a machine and AI were to think, well, what is the most efficient way to sustain things, right? Well, it would be less humans. I mean, and that's why whenever you see movies like Terminator or Matrix or whatever, that's the reason why humans are being destroyed, because they destroy things. Okay, so if machines actually took over in this case, there would be less inefficiencies. Okay, so I know that sounds crazy, but that's why those directors and those story writers came up with these same scenarios, because of that reason. And so yeah, so let me see. Star Shots are saying most general cases users don't check the hashes or don't know how to check hashes because they most often don't read the documentations. Okay, Shatter, so that leads into what I think that we as individuals, and I always talk about that because as individuals, you have a lot of control because you control how you think and you control the actions that you take. And my strong belief is, as an individual, you could do a lot, and then you could inspire others to do it as well if they also agree with it, okay? So in this case, for security, okay, like I've already mentioned, much like privacy, you have very little control because everything's on the internet, whether it's voluntary or involuntary. So responsibility-wise, I mentioned this before, we ourselves, we have to learn more and more about security. And what that means is we're gonna have to learn how to think like a hacker, okay? With things such as Kali Linux. Not only think like a hacker, but actually, you know, get some experience from it, okay? And I think the correct terminology isn't hacker, it's called cracker. That's from like the late 70s or 80s, if I remember correctly. But with that being said, it's going to be, in my opinion, harder for you to learn hacking on the internet. I know that sounds crazy, but I think it is. For a few reasons. First and foremost, the whole idea of hacking, breaking into systems, much like really bad content, they want to keep that off the internet or they want to control it. And I'm not just talking about Google. I'm talking about every single company, every business institution. And so let me give you a perfect example of this. My YouTube video, okay? Like this one right here, it has hack on it, right? I had a last video, the last one I did, live one, or a few episodes ago, where I talked about Linux hackers or something. Well, my video was flagged and I got limited demonetization or no monetization because it had the key terms hacking on there. And so the systems that are looking for this, they're going to be looking for that. So in the future, your access to learning how to hack, and once again, you could use it for ethical or black hat. That's really up to the person, right? But learning the actual tools, getting experience on it, it's exactly the same. You're going to do the same thing, whether you use it for ethical or unethical. You're going to try to break into the systems. You're going to try to learn about vulnerabilities. You're going to learn things like hashing. Okay, you're going to learn how to access memory. You know, all those things. And whether you are doing ethically or non-ethically, you have to learn the same things. And for the majority of us, if we want to learn how to do these type of things, right? You go to the internet. You don't go to a bookstore because it's outdated. And so if you go on the internet, and you see this more and more, like YouTube is a perfect example. If you go to a lot of YouTube videos which have Kali Linux or hacking or so forth, you will see less and less of those videos in the future because Google and YouTube is going to start, they've already started demonetizing them, but they will start probably banning them as well, or having them show less in the search results because hacking is bad, right? And so they don't want people to have access to that. Much like really explicit stuff on the internet, you know, they're not going to really show that. Okay, that's why for some things, especially illegal activities, people go to some place like the deep web, dark web. But as I said, big companies like Facebook, they're already there as well, and you could be sure government institutions are there as well. Okay, so it doesn't matter. But I understand in general why they're doing this. Okay, much for the same reasons why there's certain things that you do not want people exposed to. Okay, especially illegal activities. But the thing is, if you're the type of person who wants to learn about security, then unfortunately your options are going to be more limited. So how are they going to actually give you a way to learn security? Well, the majority of the times they want you to take their programs or take their certifications, right? And so, and I'm not talking about just businesses, I'm talking about the institution stuff as well. So if they do it that way, then number one, they have more control. Okay, so they can control and monitor who's actually getting these trainings. Okay, and at the same time, if you have it controlled, you can control what people learn. Okay, so I think that's the overall reason, one of the big reasons why they're doing this. They want to be able to monitor and control people who are trying to use these skills for reasons that are unethical and are illegal. Okay, and so there's really nothing that's going to stop somebody from trying to learn this. I just really feel, just from personal experience looking at YouTube, that videos are starting to get flagged, they're getting demonetized, and then if you do a search on the internet, you know for a fact that the robots are looking at the tags, the meta descriptions, and they're scanning all the content. So if it's hacking related, you know that it's flagged there somewhere, that they have this information that they can share with other entities, like, you know, like with governments, you know, like with Microsoft Windows. If you read their EULA, I don't know if it's actually in the EULA, but they can share this information with government institutions. So basically, information from you using your own computer, they could share this on a, I guess, for specific reasons. Okay, so, and Parmos, good morning. Thanks for joining, Parmos. Great point. Gaza saying IRC plus P2P disseminating information just like a good old days. Yeah, Gaza. And so, yeah, so I don't want to sound like, you know, just like, man, we're not going to be able to learn this anymore, or there's a huge conspiracy, but I have to think about it objectively. And objectively, I really feel that the more control they have over people who are trying to learn this, the more control that they have over not only their security, but also who comes in to learn security. And so I really think, as I said earlier, it is our responsibility to learn these things as much as we can. And it's obviously up to you. If it's important to you, then you're going to learn it. Okay, like I myself, I really do want to learn more about security because there's a whole bunch that I don't know. Okay, and like I said, I tested out my own website and I was able to hack it pretty easily, which sucks. Okay, but at the same time, it was good that I did that because I would have never known about that vulnerability. And at the same time, when you do these things, like everything else, like learning how to make YouTube videos, learning how to write a blog, learning how to create music, all of these things, to me, they're awesome because you're learning something. You know, you are gaining new skills. You know, you're able to use tools in many different ways. And, you know, and it's up to the individual how they want to use it. Obviously, I don't condone people use it in a very unethical manner. But if I think about it objectively, when you learn new things, it's just powerful. Okay, and so learning security, and when you learn security, you also learn privacy. Okay, like for example, I do marketing, right? Well, I learned a lot about tracking. You know, I'm learning a lot about SEO. I'm learning a lot about things that, like if you think about marketing and sales, it's a lot of psychology. So I'm learning things like copywriting, right? Or how to invoke certain emotions or actions from people. And then all of those things, when you think about it, they all go together. And so because you learn one thing, you'll learn many other things. Like if you really wanted to learn, if you started learning security, like say you started with Kali Linux, not only would you learn security, but you would understand what data is important for people who want to get into the data. You know, you learn why these services work the way that they are. You know, like simple things, and it's not simple, but simple things like, how does your router security work? Why are there different ones? You know, why is one more insecure than others? And then if you do get access to a system through that, what can you do and what can you not do? Okay, so it's things like that, and then I don't know. It's just, to me, it's fascinating. With any of these things that I just talked about, it is fascinating. But learning security, and you also learn privacy, I think it's important. Okay, and even for myself, I have a really basic understanding of it, and so maybe as I learn this, like through Kali Linux and stuff, I might share that. I'm pretty sure it's gonna get flagged on YouTube, but if it's something that I think for a general user that it's helpful, I will. I mean, that's kind of like the whole thing that I have with my channel. If you watch a lot of my tutorials, I'm not a super technical person, although I have been in the technology field in a while, but I'm more like the general user. I'm very practical. So if there are things that I share, that I learn, it's something that you could use practically for the majority of people, okay, for a general user. And so if I do have tutorials in the future, specifically it's going to be on Kali Linux, I will share practical things that you could actually use. And I think it's, for myself, it's going to be practical things that you can use to not only spot vulnerabilities, but also understand how to secure yourself better. Okay, and so so look forward to that in the future. Like I said, if it is something, as I'm learning this, I think if it's something that I think is valuable, and that might help a lot of people, then I'll go ahead and do that. Okay, and for my own self, I do want to learn more security, and I know a lot of people who are watching this channel, they have a whole bunch of different experiences, and I'm positive there's people who are extremely technical, especially in the whole security and server space. I'm positive, and programming. And so anyways, not to go on a long rant, but my whole general thought is your security, it's just like privacy, it's pretty much gone because it's on the internet. And second point, if it is important to you, learn it. You know, you don't have to be an absolute expert, but just learn it, okay? And anyway, Kali Linux is probably where I'm going to start. And so what Shatra said, whatever distro you're using now or then after downloading distro apps, always check the SHM 512 sums, MD5 sums, do it under terminal or any GUI-based apps, specifically Ubuntu PPAs or Fedora COPR Copper. Yeah, what Shatra is talking about there is, you know, because obviously we have a lot of trust in these websites that we download distros for, and so what he's talking about there is the SH512 sums. It's actually in general terms, there's like this long string of code. Okay, so there's like numbers and characters, and whenever you do that check, if it matches these numbers, then you know that that is the correct valid version. Okay, so it's secure, okay, because it's the right version, meaning whenever you download it, a new different version didn't get put in there, which could be loaded up with viruses, malware, or whatever, you know, backdoor tools. Okay, so that's what Shatra is referring to in general terms, but there are quite literally limitless things that you can learn on that. And that is it for all the main topics that I wanted to talk about today. It was first and foremost the Uber hack, secondly Intel vulnerabilities in their CPUs, and then Kali Linux 2017.3, which I will start downloading and using and learning, and then also my overall general thoughts on security in our modern age. And this will probably be a topic just like privacy that I revisit, you know, in the future, or more often not, because I really think it is important. But like I said, for myself, I'm primarily thinking of the general everyday consumer. You know, I'm not, a lot of my stuff isn't geared primarily towards really tech heavy people. Now, on a few minutes left on some other subjects, here in the United States, this was Thanksgiving, and then we just had Black Friday yesterday, and then Cyber Monday on Monday. And so I myself, I don't really get into that whole thing because it's a mess to me, and I've never gotten anything good out of Black Friday. I think one time I like waited out in the store like at 3 in the morning, and all I got was a USB stick, and that was not worth it. But I will say that for Black Fridays, the reason why in the United States they call it Black Friday is because this particular period, especially now included with Cyber Monday, it is actually the period where companies are actually make a lot of sales, and so they're in the black. Okay, so in your black means, you know, that you're not losing money. You know, so if you're in the red, you're losing money, and so that's why it's so important for companies here in the United States. But Black Friday is absolutely nothing compared to what's happening in China, or what just did happen. In China, they have a thing called Singles Day. I think that's 11/11/11, and I think I have a video that I talked about that, but it's in a magnitude that actually crushes Black Friday here in the US. So you think Black Friday and Cyber Monday, mostly Black Friday, is crazy in the United States? Check out Singles Day. That's absolutely crazy. Now, also, if you haven't seen, I did an episode like a few days ago with one of my friends. We are going to be doing movie reviews together. He actually is a lover of movies, but he watches a lot of Indian movies, okay, and he's from India. And so if you're watching my channel, I've been doing also movies out of India because I really enjoy, as you see my channel, I enjoy watching movies, especially international movies. So if you watch my channel, you probably see me review Korean type movies, see me review some Indonesian, and now more Indian films because I really enjoy them. And so look forward to some more Indian movie reviews, and also just movie reviews in general. And so I just wanted to give people like a format of my videos every single week, so that for people who are new to my channel, if they haven't seen my intro video, let me explain to you what's on my channel, and so that you could kind of understand. Because a lot of people come here, I think the majority of people come to my channel, they came because they saw a Linux video, okay? But then when they came here, there wasn't just Linux, okay? They see like movie reviews, they'll see game stuff, and they'll see stuff like this where we talk about geeky news and stuff. And so that's because I'm a geek lifestyle channel, specifically a geek lifestyle variety channel, because I enjoy variety. You know, I like doing different things, but at the same time, all my stuff is focused for geeks. Okay, so every week, what you normally see, I have a format. Okay, normally you see definitely geek and tech news. Okay, which is what we do now. Secondly, of course, you will always see Linux news, and I'm talking about every single week. Oh wow. Let me log in real quick. And so secondly, of course, is Linux. So this is like types of videos that you see every week. Third is movie reviews. Okay, movie or TV shows, anything related to movies and entertainment, you see that there. And then fourth, you will see games, video games. You know, most of the times I do retro game reviews, but I also do Linux games reviews and any news related to games. And then every now and then I also do reviews on any type of gear or software that I use, that I recommend. And also sometimes I like to talk about other things like mostly entrepreneurship and marketing, because those are things that I really enjoy. Okay, and so that's like the primary format that I have. So every single week I try to produce like basically 7 days a week of video. Normally I have 5 to 7 days, and I'm telling you right now, if you've never done YouTube or created content, that is hard. Okay, I mean, to come up with ideas for every single day, but I absolutely love using them. And I also have a playlist on YouTube how to, if you're interested in creating content. But so that's basically my format every single week. Okay, it's always going to be pretty much those formats. If I do decide to shake it up, I will, but honestly, those are the things that I enjoy the most. And so in the future, for movies, look forward to some more movies out of India, and I will have probably a new review in the next week, like maybe 2 reviews, and also maybe another Korean film that I just saw. Anyways, that's it for this episode. I usually like to leave the last half of it for talking Linux or anything else that we have discussions on, or basically what's on my mind. But it has been an hour, and I like to keep it within an hour. So thank you for Shatter, Parmos, Gaza, Vasil, Lance, and John L. Reed, and Tommy Norwood. Thank you for all of you for joining, and thank you for everyone who actually is watching this video or who watches the video later. I really do appreciate it, and I do value all the time that you spend here. So as always, if you did enjoy these videos, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. And if you did want to support my channel further, you can do that at patreon.com/geekoutdoors. We'll see you on another live episode.